Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. Tonight, we're assessing President Tinubu's stewardship in 1 year, and I've been speaking with the Deputy Spokesman of the House of Representatives, Honorable Philip Agbese. Honorable, thank you so much for staying with us on the program. Now, let's move on with this conversation.
Thank you again,
focus on insecurity, which has remained a challenge. What do you think the administration needs to do differently to make progress in this regard?
Yes, thank you once again, Jumoke, for this very important inquest. But before I touch on that, the other question that you asked, which borders on the issue of projects being commissioned by Mr. President and what he is doing, I want to quickly say, because my constituents, or our constituents, are excited about the issue of road infrastructure in the country. If you are traveling today from Kefi to Makurdi through my own federal constituency, or Tukpa, Obolafo, we have noticed serious level of work being done on these roads. My colleagues have equally confirmed through debates, motions, and all of that, that Mr. President is making impact in terms of infrastructure development, building of roads, renovation of schools, and so on and so forth. And one area in that regard is the issue of a continuation of projects that were executed but not completed by the past administration. In this area, Mr. President has really tried, and as a parliament, we are happy with what Mr. President is doing. Coming back to tackling the issue of insecurity, I can confirm to you our feelings as a parliament about Mr. President's programs in terms of efforts towards addressing the insecurity situation across the country. And His Excellency, the Right Honorable Speaker, about 2 weeks ago, organized for the first time a security seminar in the country. We had members of the executive, experts from all fields of various fields within the security architecture. They came in to talk to us. Our understanding in this regard is that Mr. President cannot do it alone. We as a parliament must support him. And when we invited this expert, we brainstormed. We looked at some of the issues. Yes, we agreed that his lieutenants are on track. There's still more to be done. And you also recall that just yesterday, the parliament debated the issue of bringing in mercenaries from other parts of the world to help us tackle the issue of insecurity. And as a parliament, in our wisdom, we agree that yes, at the moment, the armed forces, the security agencies are equal to the task. All we have to do is to support them, is to give them the enabling environment for them to be able to carry out their duties. Another area that is also very important, because when you are tackling security issues through the kinetic approach, you must also be able to address the root causes of insecurity. One of it is the issue of youth restiveness. What is Mr. President doing about youth empowerment in the country? We have before the parliament the National Youth Service Trust Fund, which is already at an advanced stage. Very soon it will be passed to Mr. President for his assent to see that young graduates, have something to do immediately they finish their youth service. We also have other programs within the Ministry of Youth. We have 2 young Nigerians, manning the Ministry of Youth, and Mr. President has equally approved about 120 billion naira to be used as youth intervention programs. So these are some of the issues that behind the scene we can actually do to address the issue of insecurity. And to a large extent, Mr. President is on track in this direction. As a parliament, we're excited about what he's doing. And they will say, Oliver Twist, we'll continue to ask more, because we really want to see that more is being done on a daily basis.
Right, but the federal government has deployed several operations to counter security threats across the country. How successful will you describe them?
If you take the political context away from some of the security challenges that we're having in the country, we will agree that our armed forces are not just doing their best, but their best seems to be enough to tackle some of these challenges. The basic problem that we have at the moment, which is not about Mr. President, it's not about the parliament, is about the political actors, the promoters and sponsors of some of these demonic activities. And that is why, as leaders, not just adopting a new national anthem that speaks into people's conscience, but that, we must, in our own way, support the administration to be able to achieve their aims and objectives. And in doing so, You want me to rate how far the security agencies have done? It's going to be very difficult to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 if you don't remove the political context. If you look at the military context, what is the level of professionalism be deployed by our security agencies when tackling these issues? In the last 1 year, we have had drastic reduction in the issue of human rights abuses by our personnel. Both the civil police, the secret police, and even members of the armed forces. And that is one area, in time past that made it very difficult, for partnering nations to be able to support us to fight insecurity. So I believe that with the improvements in our human rights record so far under the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the efforts of the security chiefs who are equally aware of the tasks ahead of them, I want to say from, this point of view that we're on track and they're doing well.
All right. Let's talk about defense funding. What is the National Assembly doing to ensure improvements in funding for security agencies? Well,
you've asked the right question, and this is also the right person to give you the answer. Coincidentally, not just as the deputy spokesperson of the parliament, I also double or triple as a member of the House Committee on Defense and also as a member of the House Committee on Police Affairs. When we came on board, we identified the issue of poor funding for the Nigerian police force, the lack of motivation. And when their budget estimate was presented to us, I recall the efforts we made. Some of our committee members went around the country to see exactly the issues with the police in terms of their welfare and their remuneration. And in the 2024 budget, we made sure that there was an increase. And again, in terms of defense funding, yes, Mr. President has done well in that regard. Nevertheless, there's still more to be done, because it is one thing for us as a parliament to make these provisions. It is also another thing for people within the executive, to cause immediate releases to the armed forces. And, if you look at other developed nations, the defense funding, security funding, police funding are usually, on the first line charge. These funds go directly. And that is exactly what we are trying to achieve. We've engaged the Honorable Minister of Finance, to see that releases are made as at when due, very timely, to the defense apparatus and as well as to the police. And I believe that even the 2024 supplementary budget that is coming before the parliament, some of the issues, that have not been captured, in terms of supporting the armed forces, the police, will be contained in that budget. And as a parliament, what we have done, in synergy with Mr. President in the last 1 year is the issue of oversight to ensure that in line with our legislative agenda, the legislative agenda of His Excellency the Right Honorable Speaker Tajuddin Abbas, PhD, is to ensure that there is transparency, that there is accountability.
All right. So, Honorable, when you say we can do better, so when you say we can do better, does this mean we can achieve a 35% defense budget in this country? Is this achievable?
Yes, it is. It is. We passed this 10th National Assembly passed the Defense Industry Corporation Bill, and Mr. President has accepted to it, which has become an act. We are looking at Nigeria producing some of the defense equipment locally to address some of these issues. We have very brilliant young men and women. And if we do some of these things, having our own corporations to produce equipment for our armed forces, one, it is going to reduce the level of dependence on other nations who sometimes will, because of our relationship with other nations, create problems for us and not supply this equipment. Two, it will equally create the issue of forest scarcity in the country. So by producing some of these things locally, and that is one area that Mr. President has done well, because when we passed the Defense Industry Corporation Bill, he assented to it. In terms of assenting to bills to become acts of parliament, I think Mr. President is doing well in that regard. And there are other bills, before us that are going to be debated, when we return from this 2 days break, in the interest of our country. And I strongly believe that if we continue with this level of collaboration between the parliament and the executive, Mr. President himself was to be able to achieve a lot more within the shortest period of time. So far, so good. In the last 1 year, just 1 year into the administration, one can beat one's chest that Mr. President, has done very, very well. And he can still do more, because this is not where we want to be. This is not the place Nigerians voted for us to be. But it's also good to commend Mr. President and agree that, yes, he's on track, because sometimes when you commend people for doing what they're supposed to do, or even doing above what they are supposed to do, they see it as a tonic, to remain on track and to do more.
Absolutely. So what's your take on the creation of state police to tackle insecurity in the country?
Well, the issue of state police is a constitutional matter. It is before us in the parliament. I think in one of the Security Council meeting, Mr. President and the governors had their interaction, and it seems to look to suggest that the 36 state governors are all in sync with the creation of state police. How are we looking at it as a parliament? His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, being the leader of the lower chamber, invited Nigerians, to join us intellectually to debate. And what did he do? In his wisdom, he took that meeting outside the parliament, for people to freely express themselves. That day, we all removed from our names the title of honorable. It was a day of frank talk. And we discussed these issues. And Nigerians, because today, if we like it or not, the largest population of our people seem to believe that security challenges can be tackled domestically, locally, from the context of man no man, people equally contributing to building the security architecture and the security network of the country. So if this is what Nigerians believe at the moment will be the solution to the problem, we as elected representatives of the people and those who are there to give legal backing, to their yearnings and aspirations, to their thoughts, we will be left with no option. But at the moment, the Committee on Constitutional Review, headed by His Excellency Right Honorable Benjamin Okeze-Kalu, is also working. A week ago, we had a meeting in Uyo where we discussed some of these issues, and we have on constitutional amendment, we have divided into thematic areas, and with experts who are guiding us, receiving memorandum. So far, we have received over 400 memorandum on various issues pertaining to constitutional amendment, to the issue of state police, issue of state creation. Basically, I think Mr. President is doing well, by allowing Nigerians to express themselves democratically. And to give it to that, okay, for instance, if you look at the situation in some parts of the country, how Mr. President, after Mr. President's election, zero interference, in activities surrounding the judiciary. We saw it when, after the 2023 general election, all various political parties elected various representatives to go into parliament and into government houses. And Mr. President has maintained a high level of neutrality, to give every Nigerian that sense of belonging that, yes, the judicial system must work for Nigerians. And we in the parliament, we are equally saying that, irrespective of our differences, irrespective of our political leanings, religious background, or ethnic affiliation, we are also able to come together to agree on a couple of issues that will help in shaping the narrative about the image of our country. So I think... all
right, so because you mentioned, you talked about the idea of homegrown approach to tackling insecurity. Do you agree with those who have said perhaps Nigeria needs foreign support to tackle insecurity?
Yes, as parliamentarians, we may have our individual opinions to some of these issues, but as a parliament, we are duty bound by the decision of the Nigerian people, having christened the 10th National Assembly as the People's Parliament, as the People's House, and opened the parliament, to Nigerians to freely express themselves, for Nigerians to guide us on critical issues. So I think that won't be my opinion, but the opinion of Nigerians. So when we are done with the public hearings that will be holding across the country, and as a parliament that is interested, in returning lawmaking back to the masses of our country, whatever decision at that point we'll be able to say, yes, this is the way to go. But somehow, I think that many Nigerians, seem to believe that state police will be the way out of the insecurity problem. Nevertheless, our slightly different opinion, because today we have a leadership in the National Assembly that is living up to the expectation of Nigerians. And in doing that, what we do in the parliament is to, in a way, polish or rebrand some of these opinions as expressed by Nigerians. Even opinions, directives or regulations coming from Mr. President, we have equally been able to touch them. That's why I mentioned the oversight committee report the other time. When Mr. President gave that directive for the implementation of the committee report, as a parliament that is alive to its responsibility, we felt to know we cannot just agree, because some of these issues have to do with the Constitution. And for us to amend the Constitution, we must look at what did the committee see many years back. What is the current reality? Do these issues canvassed by the committee, as it were, are they able to address current challenges? Like earlier, someone mentioned the issue of, yes, I saw in the newspaper reactions to the Nigerian Shippers Council regulatory bill, which is before the House. We just had the public hearing some days back. And they said, are you not going to be duplicating or creating more agencies at a time that we also have agencies on ground? And I said to them that the oversight committee report did not forbid future creation of agencies. But at that point, are the agencies addressing the issues? And that is why in the parliament today, you see members bringing bills for the creation of new agencies. The world is growing. We are also moving at par with other developed nations. We are also living, in our own reality. So on a daily basis, if there are issues that Mr. President feels, need to come through the parliament, or things that we have to do as a parliament to address the new issues, of course, definitely we are going to do them. So coming back to the question, I think so far so good. I would say all is well, and the parliament is doing well. And if Mr. President continues to sustain this level of collaboration...
Before we move on to other sectors, because we're still talking about insecurity, it's important for us to look at one of the many factors that has led to the rise and persistence of armed banditry in the country, which is proliferation of small arms and light weapons. How do we tackle this?
Yes, these issues are being addressed. We amended the national the bill on the proliferation of small arms recently. We are trying to give life to certain legislations around the Office of the National Security Advisor. These things, as Mr. President is doing, they are being tackled. But again, it is not enough, to tackle them using legislation and try to gather these arms. The core issue lies with our politicians, people who arm people during electionary campaigns. And you know that arms are very difficult to recover back to people, because, it gives you a feeling of strength when you are in custody of arms. And when these people are used for electionary activities and not disengaged with incentives, cash, or other resources to give them a second livelihood, they tend to stay on that lane, which is to continue to constitute themselves to nuisance and continue to disturb the country. So some of the things that Mr. President has done, which we are happy as a parliament, is to ensure that, there is safety, for every one of us. And we have noticed as a parliament from our interaction with security agencies that the issue of kidnapping, the issue of ransom, there are strategies in place. They are not things that I'm going to mention on TV because, of course, being members of some of these security committees, we have been trained not to divulge certain information that will hamper, on the safety and well-being of our citizens or even those in captivity. Nevertheless, we understand that they are working in this regard. As a parliament, we are carrying out our oversight function, ask necessary questions. Where possible, we carry out visits, to some of these areas. Recently, I was in Delta State, Okwama community, where we went for the public hearing to interact with members of that community on the killings of Nigerian armed forces personnel. And we made some revelations. We got some revelations from that interaction. We came back as a parliament. We are working on it. The chairman of that committee, Right Honorable Babajimi Bensi, has constituted a subcommittee to look at issues, raised by the community, issues raised by the armed forces. We are going to put them together, and we believe that having a listening president, one like Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, by God's grace, is going to look at those issues and issue out directives that will immediately, contain those issues.
All right, Honorable. The federal government is pushing for full autonomy for local governments. Why is this difficult to achieve for the country?
Well, we have 3 tiers of government: the federal, the state, and the local government. Whereas the federal government has allowed the state, to operate, with an open arm. The state have continued to hold the local government to economic strangulation. I recall as a child growing up, when I was in college, my governor then was His Excellency Senator George Akume, who is currently the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Within that time, the local government chairman ordered him. We saw that there was a high level of transparency. There was a level of accountability between the state and the local government area. The issue of local government joint accounts were not there. Local government were able to pay primary healthcare workers. The local government was able to pay primary school teachers. But today, these things are no longer possible. So the question that is begging for answers is, why have these things become a mirage all of a sudden after a period of time? You recall that His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was also governor between 1999 and 2007, and he had issues with then President Olusegun Obasanjo over local government allocations in Lagos. The local governments, when these great leaders were governors of this country, the local governments were working. And that is why His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, the Speaker of the Parliament, is disturbed that these things that were working in the past, why are they no longer working? So, Mr. President, going a step further to the Supreme Court through his Attorney General, to ensure that the local governments are freed from this economic strangulation, from the hands of the governors who, are holding back, and the dissolution, of democratically elected local government chairmen by governors who turned themselves into emperors overnight. I come from a state where the governor came on board and in the twinkle of an eye decided to dissolve the local government.
Absolutely. This matter is in court. I mean, we'll wait to see the outcome of this at the Supreme Court. But before I let you go tonight, how will you advise the president to carry on in its efforts to make Nigeria better?
Well, before us in the parliament, we have a series of resolutions. Yes, we have resolutions. We have communication to the president on issues that we have debated on. I'll give you a good example. Recently, the National Agency for the Administration of Drug and Food Control, NAFDAC, banned, sachet beverages, the consumption of sachet beverages in Nigeria. And as a parliament, we came together and said, well, let us look at this issue holistically. We invited Nigerians, actors in that sector, and people came, stakeholders came to make recommendations, to speak to the parliament. And we gathered this thing and we forwarded, a resolution of the parliament to NAFDAC that is yet to be implemented. The way Mr. President has started with a parliament that is working for the generality of Nigerians, is for Mr. President to caution, his appointees. They must, cooperate with the parliament. And where their personal interest, comes in contrast with the interest of the nation, they must learn to do away with some of these issues. So I want to say that Mr. President is on track, but he has to call the Director General of NAFDAC to order. And all the people who are not ready to implement legislative resolutions that will help Mr. President to move this country forward. Because some of these people, their aim is to cause the kind of friction that we used to have in the past between the parliament and the executive. And I think Mr. President has started well. Leaders across the globe are commending him, the way he's going about the country. He must sustain it, and he's sustaining it. You know, the bad eggs in the government, you know, he must, you know, ask them to go. Thank God Mr. President mentioned that he's going to have a periodic assessment of his appointees. And I believe in the days ahead, he should have a fair appraisal of the appointees. Those who are doing well, like the Honorable Minister of Aviation, they should be commended. And those who are not doing well, you know, they should be asked to go home.
All right, then. I find that very instructive, and I must say very thank you to you, Honorable Philip Agbese. Thank you so much for joining us tonight as the Deputy Spokesman of the House of Representatives. Thank you for your insights tonight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jumoke.
Thank you very